Afternoon intuitives. It's been a little while since I did a narcissism video, but with some of the revelations that have come to light in my family dealing with, my narcissistic family, particularly the queen bee narcissist. And if you're new to the channel, welcome and thank you for subscribing, or please subscribe. I'd like to get to 1,000 if possible. Please, the more subscribers I have, the algorithm might help me out, just a little bit. And the whole purpose of this channel is to hopefully that this information will help people. And my primary objective, essentially, of this channel is to impart information that I myself wish I had 15 years ago, and my life would have been a lot better had I. But alas, narcissism channels and INFJ channels, were not a thing in the mid 2000s. So this one is titled, all your misfortune stems back to the narcissist. And this goes hand in hand with the advice of most people who speak of narcissistic abuse, and going no contact is really the only way, or at least mostly. I guess in a few cases, perhaps low contact would work, but low contact is more of a temporary situation you employ while in the process of going no contact, because, you're going to move, you got to find jobs, logistics, things take time. Most people can't just decide to move and be gone in a couple weeks. Unless you're wealthy, then good for you. Good for you. But, in this case, I want to talk about how not just no contact, but moving out of the area where the narcissist has influence, either, through an old boys club or they're flying monkeys, as it's commonly referred to in the narcissist community. You have to get away from that, or you'll never truly be free. And it is that narcissist influence that probably has been what's screwing you over for the most part in your life. And I realized something in the last couple days. All the negative things I hear about me, like, oh, I'm mentally ill, and I don't go with the program. That's because I challenged their corrupt baby boomer supremacist status quo. But all negative things of that nature all stem back to the queen bee narcissist, my mother's older sister. And for reference, if you're new to the channel and this video, you enjoy the concept, but you want the background and the context to it, I would highly suggest that you watch my video entitled INFJ versus the Queen Bee Narcissist, and my video about my narcissistic family, which says something like narcissistic family Chestertology, as Chestertology is the name I've given to my cult-like narcissistic family, as it embodies many of the examples and tactics of a cult that a cult leader wields. And I know that even more so than now, given my conversations with John Atack, who, is a published author and a prominent ex-Scientologist, and perhaps the foremost expert on Scientology and that particular cult, but also coercive control as a whole. And I suggest, if you are in a narcissistic situation or any coercive control situation where you're basically told you can't say no and you must sit there and be exploited, to read his book, Opening Our Minds. I did a video on it too, and it's on Audible. Seriously, I wish I had that book 15 years ago too. I'm giving my honest opinion. It's not just because he's a friend of mine. But in my situation with my narcissist, I've realized that all the negative opinions of me, all the things that have held me back, all the times, for the most part, that I was cheated out of something, can all be traced back to the queen bee narc, because all the people where I received those negative comments from, all know her. They're all within her sphere of influence. And for some reason, within her sphere of influence, she's, regarded as this, regal figure. She's like a queen, and not like a figurehead queen, like, the kind that wields absolute power and divine right of king stuff. Like, she was anointed to have this authority that she gave herself, and that, rules don't apply to her, and she can make whatever double standards on a whim, especially when it pertains to calling out her chronically unemployed, pill popping, adulterous son, who been known to go with girls underage. Him and let's just say him and a certain prince named Andy would be quite good mates. They'd be quite chummy together and could compare notes. That's who my cousin wishes he was. He thinks he's a prince, you know. He thinks he's whatever, some kind of, has some kind of regal title, the Crown Prince of Chester County. But it all stems back to the narcissist. So if you think of like, jobs where you weren't given a fair shot in an interview, even though like you were perhaps overqualified. Think back to if that person knows you're narcissist and what influence that narcissist may have. And even my mother, who herself is a true borderline, whereas my aunt is a, covert narcissist. But even my borderline mother has been putting these pieces together and is starting to break the conditioning and seeing, what a horrible person her sister is. I actually got her to admit it yesterday. I said, try to separate, your blood relations to Jeannie and tell me based on her own actions, things she does of her own free will and how she treats people and how she thinks she's better than everybody. She's a horrible person. And my mother admitted that finally, because throughout my whole life, every time my mother would criticize me and say something like, well, people say this and people say that, and I would always ask, who are these people? Who are all these people? Because I'm not hearing any of this to my face. In most cases, quite the opposite. Turns out those people weren't people at all. It was one person. It was, Queen Regina. I know that's kind of redundant because Regina means queen in Latin, but that's her name. So, yeah. And this idea of, to the queen, this idea of me gaining any type of success, influence, was just anathema to her, and she couldn't have it. She sought to destroy me ever since I was a kid. She would ridicule me as a child. Like, how sick is that when you think about it? That at the time, a 40-something-year-old woman setting out to destroy and make fun of and hold down a 7-year-old. Yes, 7. So any type of influence that I have over anybody thinks highly of me, she seeks to destroy it because no one is allowed to outshine her son, the supposed crown prince. One of the major things that it all stems back to, and my mother admitted to me yesterday that her sisters always hated me, and it's for nothing I've done. She'll try to label me mentally ill, and I should probably do a separate video of it, but I'm gonna go into it now. That you know everybody is going to exhibit rage from abuse that comes out of nowhere. I actually did a video called, your justifiable rage. It was specifically for INFJs, but narcissistic abuse is going to cause you to have moments of rage. Now, we're not talking violent, we're talking screaming because you're being abused, and especially if you reach the point where you're being abused and you figured out it's narcissistic abuse and you figured out the motives behind it and you're calling it out, and yet people are going like, well, the rules don't apply to her. She's Jeannie. It is what it is. Just, bend over and take it up the ass. You're nothing compared to her. She's a baby boomer and you're not, and she's our queen. Where no matter, to a lot of the members of my family, no matter what this woman says, they'll go along with it. Like, even if it's something that is, not subjective, that is just like demonstrably, what she says is demonstrably untrue, and she's straight up pulling it out of her ass, they'll essentially sit there and be like, my queen, my queen. They won't, she can abuse whoever she wants, say whatever she wants, to anybody about anything without any evidence, without any backing up her claims other than her going, I just know, and my queen, my queen, and this woman's not highly educated. She's lived in the same area her whole life. She's a retired secretary who went to a community college for a year and learned how to type, file, and take shorthand. But in her mind, she's a lawyer and an MBA and a doctor, and just the greatest person that's ever lived. Literally, like she's like what ancient civilizations spoke of that descended from the stars. She's in Mesoamerica, she would be like the Viracocha returned, or the Anunnaki in Mesopotamia. Yeah, like she just essentially trying to deify herself. But people are slowly realizing who she is because people get sloppy and get overconfident with their abuse, and especially as they get older and they become more brazen, and that's how people figure it out. And eventually, even non-intuitives that keep smacking them in the face enough, eventually they'll put it together, and that's what's happening now, especially as more people have had enough and are beginning to call her out. But if you look at your misfortunes, specifically if you're stuck living in the same area as the narcissist, that, I'm talking in that scenario, like where you live is the same area where your narcissist lives, and they have, cronies or flying monkeys, whatever you want to call them. A lot of that misfortune can be traced to them, because especially covert narcs, they will like call employers and try to slander you. They will put whatever lies they can out there just to keep you down, because for whatever reason, and it can vary narcissist to narcissist, they need to keep you down and try to keep you subservient to their will. You are the black sheep. You exist only to be used and abused. You have no rights. You are not allowed to say no, and you must get with the program. And as I spoke before, this is what can cause the rage ups, and while you'll get labeled crazy, because when you try to force someone who has free will to become somebody that they're not, there's going to be resistance. And this is a little more true with INFJs, as free will is, so important to us, as is our integrity, and we're so unlikely to become corruptible. Specifically, somebody like my aunt, who is highly corrupt and has, very much a defender of the old boys clubs. Yes, she's a female in the old boys clubs. There's not many of them, but they exist. I'll do my own video on that, and it'll get into tribalism and stuff like that. And her son is like the epitome of a good old boy. Like, couldn't be more of a good old boy. Owes everything to the good old boys club and nepotism and cronyism. Has never gotten a single thing on his own merit. Whereas I've lived many places and have gotten, things that would have been good opportunities if not for the recession, which, somehow I was supposed to prevent or see coming at 20 years old. But yeah, that is something you have to realize, that the narcissist will go out of their way to keep you down, and they'll do this covertly. You a lot of times with a covert narc won't know what they're doing behind the scenes, but they will do it. They will do whatever they have to, because they want to see you fail, and your success infuriates them. When I got hired in 2019 as an Arlington County firefighter, that completely infuriated my aunt. She's like, that can't be. He got it. No. You don't get paid to be a firefighter. It's a volunteer thing. No. You don't test and go to the academy. No. You volunteer, and then you just drive down and say what a big shot you are, and they hire you on spot. That's not how this works. When in reality, she knows nothing about the civil service process, especially paid fire departments, as she's lived in an area that doesn't have them. And of course, she thinks that everywhere in the world functions like Chester County, Pennsylvania. But more infuriating to me anyway is how the rest of my family, well, for the most part, all those that see her as a queen, were like, well, it can't, that I must be wrong, even though I'm the one who got hired. I'm the one who went through that process. I'm the one moving there. I think I'd know more about a process and a hiring process for a job that I just got hired as opposed to somebody who's never lived, outside their little bubble and knows nobody in that profession. But of course, like, well, Jeannie said, and my queen. So, but that infuriated her, because, her son never got that job. He never applied for it, but, that would outshine Prince Eric, and we can't have that at all costs. Even other family members have admitted that my aunt sees her son as the second coming, which is, he is a true, smug, narcissistic, elitist, very conservative prick. Yeah, Eric, my cousin Eric, how to describe him? He would be like a Republican version of Seth MacFarlane, would be a pretty accurate representation. But he's a horrible human being too, but he's to be treated with reverence because of who birthed him, oh, so long ago. And the trumpets rang, and and when, yeah, it's a messed up situation, and I share my personal stories because it's sad if they do resonate with you, but if you're in the same situation, it's important to know what's going on, and that no, it's not you, because most of us don't know it for most of the time the abuse is going on. it is drilled into us, and we are, like essentially beaten into submission that there's just something so wrong with us that we can't see, and we just must go with the program and do what they want us to do. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to be broke, subservient to them, living in an area you hate, working a job you absolutely despise. That's a dead end. That's why they've been trying to make me a landscaper for so many years. Well, Chester County is the landscaping capital of the world. I swear to God, it is. I can't take a 5 minute drive without seeing somebody in a pickup truck towing a zero turn. It is a ridiculous amount of landscapers here, like everybody and their brother. You know. But that's what they want. They want you to live the life that you don't want, and any resistance to that, any expression of your free will be met with anger and slander. They will try to tell you not to try, that there's no point in doing it. No, you'll never get that. Like me testing to be a firefighter, even though this was like even the first time in 2006 at 19. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again for effect. I was 19. I was in fire science classes at night and getting president's list, which means I was above a 3.5 GPA. I was working as an EMT, so I already had EMT experience. I had junior firefighter experience, which for those of you in cities, it's the same thing as the Explorer program. Most police and fire in major cities have that. But me being a paid firefighter, like to them, like they acted as if I said I'm going to be a movie star, like it was something that ridiculous and grandiose, because it's like, oh, that job doesn't exist. You can't leave Chester County, and that's another point that it stems back to. Only a narcissist really will try to beat in you that your whole life has to be in like the area you grew up. And the reason for that is they try to drill that into you in childhood, because, well, if you get out of the area where they live, then you're out of their sphere of influence. If you're living somewhere where they're not there, nor are any of their flying monkeys, then they can't abuse you anymore. They lose their supply. So they will try to beat into you that, people don't do that. This is the whole world, and, you can't leave this area. This is the greatest place on earth, a depressed Rust Belt town. But you should have saw it 30 years ago. Yeah. They'll try to get you to think like that you are limited to that small area where you grew up. And that was a tactic that, my narcs used over and over and over and over again, until actually fairly recently, when they realized that, that battle was lost after living in Arlington, and Arlington itself was exactly as I thought it would be. It was great, except for that whole COVID thing. But I knew right then and there that was like the final proof that it's like, it is Chester County. That is the problem. I was right all along, but I didn't trust my intuition, as young INFJs must learn to do before I did. But I'll use another example quick. I know this is getting a little long, but this can be in work too. Aside from like narcissists in the family, like, I spoke before, and go watch my bullying and hazing at Arlington County Fire Department if you're not familiar with what happened to me in the fire academy. But there was one instructor that didn't like me, and he, I'm not going to really get into this because it'd be way too long, but he did everything in his power to get me to fail out, because he was a typical good old boy and I was anti-good old boy, and he saw me as a threat essentially, and he didn't like my pagan religion at all, or my support of feminism and female firefighters, because, I'm a fourth generation firefighter, and skill and merit don't matter. It matter who you know and who you related to. This is my club, boy. And I don't want you in my club, in mine, even though I'm not an officer, because I'm not officer material, even with my good old boy connections, which is pretty sad. But the point of me bringing this up is, I had no problems with the other 22 recruits in my academy class, and I had no problems with the other instructors independently. Those that did form a negative opinion of me solely did so by his influence behind the scenes in the instructor offices, which I was later told by, instructors who spoke out in favor of me and helped blow the whistle on this guy's abuse, and which was a pattern for him. He went after other people before me, mostly women, because, this is a man's job. In the club, I shouldn't have to compete with people. I'm entitled to this because of who I'm related to. It's my crew, my department. But that kind of thing. So again, it all stems back to the narcissist. That's why it's so important to know if someone is a narcissist, and if you usually know if you are their target. But it's important to understand that they will influence other people covertly behind the scenes, and you will start to develop or be targeted by these people. And you have to deal with the core of that, which is the narcissist, or, in my case where I grew up, the queen bee narcissist. I wanted to share this because I think it's very helpful for those in similar situations, so you can understand just how much a narcissist can influence other people, especially, because they're usually going to do it behind your back where you can't defend yourself, and especially if it's like a cult-like environment where that narcissist is seen as some kind of queen, they'll take her uneducated, unworldly word as essentially gospel just because they've convinced everybody that I'm me and I'm the greatest. But she will soon be exposed for who she is, and her son too. And that's going to be the best part, is everybody knowing who her son really is and what he's done, and her precious, uh, veneration will be over because, my narcissistic aunt mentally never left high school, so I'm going to take away from her precious popularity. And really, all I'm doing is telling the truth. I'm just talking about decades of abuse of me and other people, simply for no other reason than existing and or refusing to venerate her as some kind of queen. So remember, trust your intuition. If you think other people abusing you or having negative opinions of you trace back to a core narcissist, because trust me, it most likely does. And don't sell out your integrity to call out the narcissist. You don't have to. All you need is truth. Please subscribe.